Well, hi everyone, welcome back to Figure It Out. It's time to scale back just a little bit. What I've been doing lately is I've been doing some pretty sizable dioramas, and one of the things that I wanted to do originally in this channel was to do maybe some just small display stand type dioramas, ones that I did. Like I did one where it was just for a Mortal Kombat Spawn figure. It was just a doorway. I wanted to kind of move back to one of those maybe small displays and just see what we could do with it. I do have a figure. I've got this Chris Hemsworth Thor face sculpt, and I really like this figure. It's not, the articulation is kind of limited. I'm not super excited about that, so its posability in a diorama is limited, but maybe I can find just a stand that I could put him on. So let's explore some options. So looking at the first movie, one of the big battles happened on Jotunheim, the Frost Giant's planet, and it has these really cool structures on them. So I was thinking maybe a base that reflects that would be pretty cool. I'm going to make it relatively small, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to add one of these Halloween decoration skulls. It's a lot bigger, but could be a Frost Giant skull, like maybe in battle. So I'm just going to cut the base out at this point. Got my hot wire knife, and we're just going to kind of scalp the edges of this piece of XPS foam and kind of cut into it to make it look like a base. One technique that I think looks really cool is to kind of plunge the razor knife at an angle and then pop it out to the side, and it creates this really cool looking kind of rock scalloped edge, almost like the cliff face has been sheared or something like that. So I'm doing this all the way around this particular base. I think it looks really cool when it's all said and done. So just putting it at an angle and then popping it to one side. You don't make two cuts, you don't make a V cut, you just make one cut, pop it, pull that piece out. I don't know why the popping just makes it look a little bit better, but it does. It gives it a nice crisp look. I'm gonna have this skull kind of be depressed into the ground a little bit, so I'm gonna dig out a kind of a shallow spot so it can be kind of sunk in at an angle. And so just taking a sec to chisel that out and kind of see what that might look like if this were sort of half buried in the ice and snow. It came with some seams in it that I didn't want to show. As it turns out, some of them I didn't need to bother sanding because I'm going to cover them, but I just spent some time sanding it. When I was looking at the pictures, I saw that the structures had all these kind of crystal pieces that stuck out, so I'm going to make some of those now. Going back to address the skull, I thought, well, maybe I'll put a helmet on it, kind of make it look like it would, this guy died in battle, but I have not a clue on how to make a helmet. So I've got this EPS foam that a lot of the cosplayers use to make stuff, so I'm going to see if I can craft a helmet out of this. Went ahead and got this spray adhesive, and you just spray a little on there, let it dry a bit, and then as you press it down it sticks. It holds really well, so I'm pressing this thing to the skull. It's sticking. Of course, right now it looks like maybe a nun that died, or a nurse from the 50s, but what I'm hoping is I can kind of cut away the excesses and press the rest to the skull, and maybe hide those seams here in a bit, and seems to be working pretty good, better than I anticipated. Of course, further research shows me that when cosplayers are making helmets and such, they have patterns, but I didn't have a pattern, so I'm just doing my best to glue it down and cut away the excess and keep pressing it in. There are going to be some gaps, but I feel like I have a way of hiding those gaps when it's all said and done. Really looks like I've made, no pun intended, kind of a little skull cap for this guy. I want to do some sort of the cheek protectors that you see on some of the helmets, and so we're going to cut that out of EPS foam as well, and one for each side, and then same way we're going to glue those on. I couldn't spray it here. That just that spray would go everywhere. So I was spraying it into this little lid that I could throw away, and then just using a craft stick and spreading it on there, which that technique worked pretty well. You can see I do have some seams, but my plan to hide those is, first and foremost, let's go ahead and try to wrap some of those seams with some of this EPS foam. I made this little nose guard that goes all the way down the skull helmet, and now I'm going to make some that go around the sides, hiding some of those seams in the foam itself. After getting those marked and cut and glued down, now I've got to figure out a way to hide the rest of the seams. And some research showed that, well, what I could use is especially if I'm not trying to wear this, I could use some of this air dry clay, just a lot of water and pushing that into the cracks, and just forming that against the skull itself. That worked really well. I was able to hide all the seams and gaps in that. After putting a little bit of primer on that foam to harden it up a bit, I'm doing a dark wash on the skull, but then I'm going to come back with a ton of light wash to make it look like it's frozen. And that's after I'd applied the light wash, so you can see it. Hopefully it looks a little icy on there. That's the goal. I haven't painted the helmet yet, which I'm about to do now. I've got sort of a dark bluish gray, kind of looking like it's supposed to be steel. So we're going to paint that up and go over all the overspray and paint from painting the skull itself. I made some nicks in the helmet too to make it look like I had some battle scars on that helmet. Now the magic, it's dry brushing this kind of silver paint over it, and I'm telling you, once you get this dry brush on there, I mean, it looks like it looks very metallic, very steel-like, with that dark undercoat and then this very light, shiny metallic paint on top. I'm telling you, every time I've done metal with this, what's supposed to be metal, it just looks so cool. So I always get pretty excited to see things come to life like this, with this kind of shine on it. I mean, you would not know that's foam. So looking good. Now I've got those little crystallized pieces, so to speak, and I'm going to just take my hot glue and glue these guys down in different places, like it's just been so cold. These ice crystals have formed, I mean, just huge pieces. So kind of reflective of some of the pictures I looked at. Obviously otherworldly from what we know. Just cut another little piece that's there on kind of a oblong piece. That's going to be what Thor's going to stand on. Another kind of piece that I could see in some of the pictures. I'm going to put a kind of a cobalt blue down as an undercoat, and then we're going to dry brush all over this, but this just kind of gives it that icy look as a base coat. I'm going to put 2 coats of paint on there. So this is the first coat. Now the second coat's been applied, and now we're going to go with some dry brush. I used 3 coats of dry brush. This is actually a light blue that's going on right now. You can see it in my palette there in the background, and it looks kind of white, but it's a light blue. I even then go to a lighter blue for a second coat, which you can also see now in the palette, and then I'm going to wrap it up with a white dry brush after I get done with this. So 3 coats total of dry brushing, just one over the other, just gives it depth in that paint. So now I'm doing the white, and I'm not doing that middle section because I'm going to come back with something in a minute, but before I can do that, I need to glue the skull in place. I wanted to glue him with his mouth open to kind of give it a little bit more of a haunted sort of, bad ending kind of a vibe. So I'm going to put this kind of icy snow down. It's a mixture of EVA glue and white paint and baking soda. and that makes this great little paste that hardens really well, but looks like kind of icy snow when you put it down. So that's why I didn't cover that middle section. I'm covering it now with this this mixture. I used this in my other diorama where I did the ice. One thing I did do differently was I got this snow from the craft store, which did not call for water, and it looks like little crystallized pieces. I'm using this liquid nails because now I want to sculpt some icicles. I think this is really one of the coolest little final steps. Is now that I've got that kind of snow looking stuff, that ice all over it, I want to put some really neat looking icicles using that liquid nails silicone adhesive. And here we go. All right, well, we've got this little display stand done, and I gotta tell you, I'm actually quite pleased with how this has turned out. You know, one of the things that I really enjoyed about this build was working on this skull. I mean, it was a Halloween decoration, and we turned it into this armor-clad ice giant, you know, battlefield skull. I think it looks really cool in there. I really enjoyed putting the EPS foam, cladding this skull in this helmet and just designing that. It was a lot of fun. I think one thing that really put this over the top is adding the icicles onto the skull's helmet and face. It just really adds so much. I thought the idea of having these large crystal formations was kind of neat. I don't know, it just gives it a little bit more character. Now, if you've watched this channel, you know that I have done lighting on every single one of my dioramas. I just really get jazzed about these little LEDs. They're a lot of fun to put on there, and they add so much more character. When I started in on this one, I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do any LEDs. This is going to be a very simple base, a one-day build, so to speak. I mean, I wanted to be able to do this in one sitting. But as I got into it, I started thinking, you know, I've always added lights. Where could I put a light? And so, let's see. I decided we'd go ahead and throw one inside the skull. Now, the Frost Giants in the movie had red eyes, and so I went with, I toyed around with the blue LED and the red LED, and I just went with the red LED, maybe because we're close to Halloween at the time of this filming or whatever, I don't know, but I thought, red, it's going to go with the cape, it's going to kind of go with the vibe of what I'm looking for. So I know they didn't glow red after the fact, and this is not something you'd find on the battlefield, but I just wanted to, just because I think it's fun. So threw a red LED inside, just drilled a hole up inside. I found, so normally I've used these AA 2-gang packs for batteries and stuff like that and for power, but I found this little guy online, and what it is, it's a place for one of our CR3032 coin batteries, and you can put a coin battery in there, and I'm running one LED, and I thought, man, it is super overkill to try to put two AA batteries to power one LED. And so I found this little guy, and it should power it for a long time off of that single cell, but that little 3-volt coin battery, and the profile is so thin. I thought, well, this is really perfect for a little stand like this. And if you were wanting to do any small displays that you want to light up for, let's say, tabletop gaming, Dungeons and Dragons, things like that, and you wanted to put some LEDs, some torches or something, this little guy right here is absolutely fantastic, as opposed to just kind of leaving some exposed wiring and shoving a battery in between exposed wiring, which is how I've seen some tabletop gaming solutions. To get one of these, I think I got like 6 or 8 or something like that for like $6. They're like $1 a piece or less. I will put a link in the description, so if you have a desire to get some of these for your own diorama builds, totally worth it. these work great for what we've got. This, and they come pre-switched, pre-wired for a switch. Now I did modify mine a little bit. The wire comes out of the front. The wire comes out of the front and the switch is on the front. So I took the case off and I re-drilled a hole, and I had my wire come out the top so I could tuck it back like this and I could just see the switch exposed. So a little bit of a flaw in design, but there's 2 little screws in here, completely plenty of room to drill another hole to where we can send the wire through. So that was another little thing that I did on that, something you might consider. Well, if you've enjoyed the video, if you've enjoyed the build, then don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate that. Man, the channel is kind of moving forward, and I'm so happy about that. So thank you to all of you. Whether we're doing a toy review or whether we're building some dioramas, you guys are always so kind and supportive, and I do my best to answer everyone, and so you can keep the comments coming. Thank you for watching Figure It Out.